Callard, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ben. I apologize.
So I really do recommend Paul's book, by the way. It's an excellent book. And part of why it's excellent is that it's an honest book. That is, he's upfront about what he's arguing for and what would need to be true for communism to come into reality. I share Paul's passion for the idea that, as he puts it on his handout, the paramount good in life is not to get, but to do. Though I think he may undervalue, maybe severely, the value of getting by framing it, as he does on the handout, in terms of fine cars and fancy houses, rather than in terms of things like food and central heating. That is, getting in the sense of having material possessions is pretty important too. It's pretty important to a good life. But I want to grant him that I want to join him in this ideal that the thing of paramount good is to have meaningful work. But what I don't understand is why he sees that passion for the idea of work or meaningful work driving him towards communism rather than capitalism. So first of all, I think there's a sort of implication, which Paul may not intend, that rich people have meaningful work and poor people don't have meaningful work, which is false. That is, plenty of rich people do things that are not meaningful at all, either to themselves or to the world, and plenty of poor people do things that are meaningful both to themselves and to the world. So as each of us knows, a lot of the meaning that we get from a job, no matter what that job is a matter of the sort of attitude that we bring to that job. So I don't think in a way that the question of, I share his valuing of meaningful work, but I don't think that it's not a matter of capitalism versus communism whether your work is meaningful. Again, I've worked a lot of jobs, and I worked for a couple of years at a video store, and it wasn't the most thrilling job in the world. But you know, I mean, I did the thing we all do. I made some friends, and I got to rent free videos, and you know, looking down on it sort of impartially, I provided a service that helped other people, I guess, and I made some money at the same time. I complain sometimes, like we all complain about our jobs, but my job had some meaning to me in the world. And so, I mean, maybe we can talk about this in the exchange that we're about to have. But I guess my question to Paul is, why is he thinking of the ideal of meaningful work as being linked to the idea of communism as opposed to capitalism? It seems to me that the issue of meaningful work, while very, very important, sort of cuts across the debate between capitalists and communists. That's something we all have to kind of figure out, no matter what kind of economic system we're living in. And it's not easy for no matter what system. To put it another way, I don't think that meaning comes from which economic system you're in. It comes from a bunch of other facts about your life. I'm going to make a slightly more, 30 seconds, okay. Slightly more generally, I think communists often think that the meaning of people's lives should come from the economic system amount of time. All right, I'm gonna respect the clock.
Oh.
Thank you, gentlemen. This is another portion of our debate. What's going to happen here is that two speakers and debaters will engage each other by asking each other some important and pertinent questions regarding the issue. So go ahead and begin our dialogue, which is take place for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how far it goes. So I'll open up the floor for you gentlemen to engage each other.
You want to start?
No, because all I thought of was how to respond to your
Please speak.
last. Oh, yeah.
You can respond to it if you want.
Well,
yeah.
But so the question was, what's the connection between meaningful work and capitalism? And I guess the connection I would make is related to racism, which is this, which is, it's not just racism, but it's that I'll talk about 3 people in the room who I think, from what little I know of them, have jobs that they find relatively meaningful, and that probably, I'll say this of myself, and I'm guessing it's true of Ben and Khaldoun as well, that we would go to work even if we weren't paid, provided that our needs were met. So if all my needs were met and I was told I could do anything in the world I wanted to do, what would I do? Well, I'd teach philosophy, right? Because that's what I love to do. But that's very rare. I also was a postal worker for 6 years, as you know. And working under the supervision of another is, so I'll put this to you then as a question. It seems to me that under capitalism, the drive for profits forces the bosses to subordinate labor to a supervisor who has to force them to work under conditions which lead to profits. They cannot leave them alone and let them do whatever they want. That's at least my proposal. And that subordination to your supervisor every moment on the job reminds you every day that you're a slave, and that deprives your work of any joy and meaning when someone's watching you work.
Okay, so I mean, the first thing, just to speak to the very first thing you said, I don't see how this is about race. It seems to me that the issues and themes that we're talking about here are human issues and themes. They don't have anything to do with race. But maybe in a minute, maybe you can say a little bit more about that. Right. It's certainly true that some people have a job that they like and find meaningful, and other people have a job that they don't like and don't find meaningful. The thing that I was questioning was whether that divide lines up with the divide between capitalism and communism. It seems to me that no matter what economic system we have, some people are going to get meaning out of their work, and some people are not going to get meaning out of their work. And that's a complicated equation that has to do with who you are, what the job is like, and so on. So it doesn't seem to me that the abstract relations that you were just describing between, you know, the owners, the managers, and the employees is the thing that dictates whether a job has meaning. It's going to be dictated by other facts, and those facts could obtain in a capitalist society or a communist society. So that was the thing that I wasn't sure about. But maybe, do you want to say a word about, I mean, you were saying that you see race as figuring pretty importantly in this story.
Right.
And your book talks at length about this. So, and as I just said, I don't see that to be the case. So maybe if you want to say another word about that.
Historically, inequality within the working class has been organized not just on racial lines, but significantly on racial lines, which meant what? That the crappiest jobs under the closest supervision that involved the least opportunity to use your mind and creativity were done historically in the United States by black workers, by immigrant workers, and in the current period, particularly are done by black and undocumented workers. And that the social control in the United States, and we could talk about the current election cycle, social control in the United States has essentially depended on getting a large segment of the working class to see other workers as their enemies, not the capitalists. And that's how racism functions psychologically, to divide the working class by creating significant inequalities within the working class, both in the kinds of work people do and in the kinds of rewards they receive. And then, just as an anecdote, it's no accident that you're a philosopher as well, aren't right? That in philosophy, less than 1% of philosophers are American-born black.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, oh, sorry, okay, good. So, I mean, again, I can't help but draw from what you just said that the primary issue is about class, about being working class or not working class rather than race. So again, I mean, most poor people are white. So I'm having a hard time tracking that particular thing. But let me speak to another.
Most poor people in the United States are white.
Right. That's true, right?
But most people in the United States are white. The rate
right.
of poverty is 2.5 times among black people what it is among white people.
Right.
But since 70% of the U.S. population is white, in absolute numbers, do the math, right? There'll be more poor white people,
Absolutely.
even though the poverty rate is 2.5 times among black people what it is among white.
That's absolutely right. But it does seem to me that ultimately speaking, your concern is with the working class per se, which is a class idea, not a race idea.
You cannot separate racism from talking about the working class. That's a mistake that people who have regarded themselves as socialists have made, and it's a very profound error. You cannot understand the development of the working class in the United States without understanding racism and the crucial role that racism and national divisions have played in dividing U.S. workers, and gender inequalities have played into the key to the capitalist control is they've got us all fighting against ourselves.
I mean, well, let me make a relatively superficial point. The phrase "working class" is a term that communists use a lot. I think that term doesn't have a huge amount of meaning. Virtually everybody in this country works, and that includes the wealthy people. That is, who doesn't work? Doctors work, lawyers work. Does Bill Gates not work? No, he works extremely hard. Does Oprah Winfrey not work? No, she works extremely hard. So that, it seems to me that term represents a sort of fallacy or myth in the communist worldview, that there's this group of rich people who don't work and who are running the show. I think that's just factually incorrect. If you look at the Forbes 400 or the 400 wealthiest people in the U.S., and that's easy to find online, you'll see people who have done all, they make candy and tires and movies and hair care products and chewing gum and pizza, and apparently Jay-Z and Seinfeld are right below the Forbes 400 right now. They're about to crack into the 400. Do they not work? Is rapping and telling jokes, is that not working? So I don't like this term working class. Almost everybody works, including people who are very well off. So, but I'll stop my little rant about that term and maybe let you respond to that.
Yeah, I think it's in the little handout. By the way, if these didn't get out to everybody, I had a bunch that I forgot to. Does somebody have one of these? A handout? If you don't, there's a whole bunch more. That if you look at it in a broad historical sense, it's possible for some people to live without, in other words, producing the essential things. Among the things that Ben mentioned, clearly food is essential, right? Healthcare is essential to our lives as they are now. Housing, transportation, those things are essential to our lives. Other things are part of social control. The police don't produce anything essential, but they do control us. The U.S. military does not produce anything essential, but it does go all over the world fighting wars. The capitalists do not produce. Rather, they live from the surplus that's produced by labor. If you go back all through the history of human labor, there reaches a point in human societies where labor produces a surplus and is able to support a non-laboring class. In the United States, there is a very large surplus that's produced by the labor of the working class. I think there is an interesting conversation, frankly, about whether the three of us are part of the working class. Even though we have jobs, you could argue that we don't do anything productive for capitalism. But that's a long discussion. But the fact is, I was a postal worker for 6 years. I did plenty that was productive for capitalism. And I'm guessing that most of the people in this room have jobs where you work for a capitalist of one sort or another.
Yeah, I mean, the worry I have is with that category. I'm just not sure who we're talking about. Oprah Winfrey has $2.7 billion, I just read. Is she a capitalist? I mean, does she count as a capitalist according to the communist?
Well, you mean when she's working or when she's living off what she has?
Either way. These are not categories.
I mean, she's an entertainer. And in some broad sense, I would think entertainers might be, the discussion about entertainers might be like the discussion about philosophy professors. We don't really produce anything that important. Under capitalism, the culture which capitalism supports is the culture of capitalism. And that means that the philosophy and the rest of the stuff that's taught in our colleges and universities and the culture that we see on the television is culture that serves the class of capitalists, not culture that serves the working class. So I don't think that they are what I would call the heart of the working class. But Ben, I think you would acknowledge that virtually all the people in this room are part of the working class.
Sure. As I was saying, the way I would use that word, almost every American is part of the working class. Anybody who works is part of the working class.
I wouldn't use it that way.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. I mean, I think you were just a bit too quick or too dismissive about the value of the work of somebody who doesn't make food, clothing, and shelter. So Oprah Winfrey brought a great deal of happiness to a lot of people over a long period of time. You know, there's bread and there's roses. They're the things that keep us biologically alive, and then they're the things that make life worth living. She falls into that second category, not the first one. But I don't see the value of her work as being any less significant because it falls into that second group. In fact, there'd be no point in living if, oh, time is up.